Ethan's road trip had gone longer than planned. Exhausted, he pulled up a hotel booking app, but every hotel was full. Just as he was about to give up, a listing appeared, the Penrose Hotel, vacancy available. He didn't remember seeing it earlier. The reviews were odd. Short, cryptic messages like, "Do not open the third door." But exhaustion won over suspicion. The hotel was nestled on a lonely road, bathed in dim, flickering neon light. Inside, the lobby was strangely silent. The receptionist, a pale man with hollow eyes, handed Ethan a key without asking for ID. His room, 306, smelled faintly of dust. He locked the door, tossed his bag onto the chair, and collapsed onto the bed. Just as his eyes shut, a whisper drifted from the vent. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan sat up, heart pounding. He jolted awake, scanning the room, unsure if he had imagined the whisper. The vent was silent now. Shaking it off, he decided to get some water. Stepping into the hallway, he noticed something unsettling. The corridor stretched longer than he remembered, the dim yellow lights flickering, revealing peeling wallpaper and faded carpet. He turned to head back, but his room was gone. The numbers jumped from 305 to 307. His breath hitched. Maybe he was sleep-deprived. Maybe he got turned around. He walked further, searching for a stairwell or elevator, but the hall twisted into another, then another. The silence was suffocating. Finally, he found the front desk, and the receptionist stared at him blankly. "Problem, sir?" "My room is gone," Ethan said. The man's lips curled into a smile. "Are you sure you ever had one?" Ethan clenched his fists. "I checked in an hour ago, room 306. My bag is in there." The receptionist slid a leather-bound guest book across the counter. "Please, show me your name." Ethan flipped through the pages. The names were written in perfect, identical script. None were his. A chill crawled down his spine. Maybe there's been a mistake. "You should rest, Mr. Carter," the man interrupted, his tone unsettling. Ethan hadn't given his last name. "You'll find your room waiting." Ethan turned toward the hallway, and sure enough, room 306 was back. His bag sat exactly where he left it. Shaken, he locked the door and lay down. Something was deeply wrong with this hotel, but sleep took him again. This time he dreamed of shadowy figures gathering at his door, whispering his name in voices he recognized, his own. Morning never came. His phone read 3:06 a.m. Again and again. The time never changed. Panic tightened his chest. He needed out. Rushing to the lobby, he found an elevator. He punched the lobby button, but it took him to the third floor instead. The doors slid open to reveal an endless, dark hallway. A single door stood ahead, marked "Do Not Enter" in red paint. He should have turned back, but something called to him. He reached for the handle, and it twisted on its own. Behind it was a mirror, but Ethan's reflection didn't move. It just stood there, smiling. Then, in a perfect mimic of his voice, it whispered, "Welcome back." Ethan stumbled back as his reflection grinned wider, revealing teeth too sharp, too wrong. The mirror began to ripple like water, and his reflection stepped forward, pressing a hand against the glass from the other side. "Let me in," it whispered. Ethan turned and bolted. The hallway stretched endlessly, no doors, no exit. His breath came in sharp gasps as the air thickened. Then, suddenly, he was back in room 306. His hands trembled as he locked the door. His reflection in the window was normal again, but the whisper returned. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan spun around, but no one was there. Yet his mirror? His reflection hadn't moved. It still stood at the door, facing him, and this time it blinked. Ethan barely slept. His reflection watched him all night. By morning, if it was morning, he left his room, determined to find answers. The lobby was occupied now. Guests sat in chairs, sipping coffee, staring into space. None spoke. Their movements were eerily synchronized. A woman stirred her tea in slow, perfect circles. A man blinked at precise intervals. Ethan approached the front desk, but the receptionist wasn't there. Instead, the guest book was open, pages blank. A whisper brushed against his ear. "You need to leave." He turned sharply, and a bellhop stood beside him, pale and nervous. "Where's the exit?" Ethan asked. The man swallowed. "There is none." A shiver ran down Ethan's spine. The guests turned to face him simultaneously, all of them smiling. Ethan backed toward the elevator and jabbed the button. The doors slid open to a pitch-black shaft, no lights, no floors, just endless darkness. His breath hitched as he turned to the bellhop, but the man was gone. Instead, a figure stood at the far end of the lobby, his reflection, except he hadn't moved. The lights flickered and the reflection twitched, then it stepped out of the glass. Ethan turned and ran, sprinting up the stairs, pushing past distorted hallways that shouldn't exist. Doors changed numbers and the walls groaned. He reached room 306, only to find it locked. He banged on the door, desperate, and a voice answered from inside, his own. "Go away!" Ethan's heartbeat hammered in his ears. He twisted the knob and it opened into a place that looked different. Furniture covered in sheets, air thick and stale like it hadn't been used in years. A newspaper lay on a dusty table, the headline reading, "Man Goes Missing at Local Hotel, Room 306. His picture was beneath it, and the walls pulsed around him, expanding and contracting like lungs. A whisper slithered from the vent. "You've always been here." Ethan turned to the mirror, but his reflection was gone. Instead, the glass showed another room, identical to his, but with someone standing inside. A man. Ethan stepped closer. The man turned. It was him, but older, eyes sunken, lips cracked. And as Ethan watched in horror, the reflection grinned. Ethan stumbled back, his aged reflection moving closer, pressing both hands against the glass. Its cracked lips parted. "Time runs differently here." Ethan swallowed hard. "Who are you?" the figure chuckled. "You soon." The lights flickered violently and a sharp pain shot through Ethan's skull. He collapsed to his knees, repeating his head as the whispers returned. His own voice, repeating, "You've always been here." Darkness swallowed the room. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was standing in the hallway and his reflection was gone. But the hotel had changed. The wallpaper peeled in strips, revealing rotting wood, and the air reeked of mildew. He saw the guests, their faces blank, hollow eyes, and grinning mouths frozen in twisted smiles. Ethan bolted down the hallway, and no matter which way he turned, the layout shifted. A door at the end stood ajar, and he dashed inside, finding an impossible floor of the hotel, abandoned and crumbling with furniture covered in sheets. A ledger sat on a rusted desk. Flipping it open revealed pages of names, thousands of them. At the bottom of the list, a fresh entry appeared in ink. Ethan Carter. His stomach dropped as footsteps echoed behind him. He turned to see the guests had followed, standing silently in the doorway, their smiles stretching too wide as they whispered, "Join us." Ethan backed away, heart racing. His eyes darted around for an escape when he spotted a door at the end of the hall, one that hadn't been there before. He sprinted toward it, the guests not chasing him but only turning their heads to follow his every movement as he shoved it open, and found himself back in the lobby. But something was wrong. The air felt heavier, the receptionist was gone, and the front door, his way out, was wide open. Hope surged through him as he bolted toward it, but then darkness enveloped him, and a cold hand gripped his wrist. A voice whispered in his ear, "You don't belong out there anymore." Ethan struggled, twisting away from the unseen grip, stumbling forward and reaching for the exit. When his foot crossed the threshold, pain shot through his body. The outside world twisted, streets blurred, buildings melted. He turned back. The hotel was the only thing that remained solid, and the guests stood in the doorway, smiling and waiting. Then his reflection appeared in the glass door. Except this time it wasn't mimicking him. It reached forward. Ethan screamed as the reflection grabbed his arm and yanked him into darkness. When he opened his eyes, he was standing back inside the lobby. The front door was gone, and the receptionist reappeared, grinning. "Checking out, sir?" Ethan's breath hitched. He realized he was trapped, and the hotel had never let anyone leave. Staggering backward, he cried out, "Let me out!" The receptionist smiled back. "But you're already home." And Ethan's pulse pounded as he scanned the lobby, the guest book still sitting open on the counter. Desperate, he lunged for it, flipping pages wildly as the names shifted and letters twisted into different names, none of which he recognized, until the ink bled. pooling into a single sentence. "You have always been here." Slamming the book shut, Ethan shouted, "No! I checked in last night." The receptionist's grin widened as the clock on the wall froze at 3:06 a.m. The air grew thick with whispers as guests stood in the corners, watching, waiting. The receptionist spoke again, his voice hollow and inhuman. "If you don't belong here—" "Where do you belong?" Ethan turned to run, but the walls of the hotel were already closing in. He sprinted down the hall, and every turn led him back to the same place, the lobby. A new door suddenly appeared, one that felt like fate, and he didn't hesitate. Inside was a small, windowless room with a single chair facing a mirror. In that mirror, he saw himself, older, frail, his eyes dark and lifeless. His reflection spoke. "You never left, Ethan." Backing away, he found that the door behind him had vanished, the walls pulsing and breathing as the whispering returned, growing louder now. Turning to the mirror, he saw his reflection alone, but behind it stood dozens of figures, faces twisted into wide, unnatural grins. The guests, hands pressed against the glass, beginning to step through. Panicking, Ethan stumbled backward, searching for a door, an escape, anything. As he knocked over the chair, sending dust spiraling into the air, everything stopped, the whispers silenced, and the guests froze. Before slowly stepping back into the mirror, the glass rippling, Ethan's own reflection remained, smiling that same eerie grin. "You don't have much time left." The mirror cracked, and Ethan found himself standing alone, back in room 306. Gasping, his hands shook, his mind raced. Had it all been a dream? His phone still lay on the nightstand, and as he grabbed it, it read 3:06 a.m. His stomach dropped again, and the door rattled. Someone was outside. "Who's there?" he asked. A voice answered, his own. "Don't open the door." Ethan's breath caught, trembling hands reaching for the knob as he slowly twisted until the door swung open, revealing nothing. The hallway lay empty and dark, the air feeling stretched like reality itself was thinner. Stepping cautiously into the hallway, he looked down to find the carpet squishing underfoot. It wasn't carpet, it was fabric. The entire hallway was lined with hotel uniforms arranged like flattened bodies, and suddenly one twitched. A whisper crawled from the shadows. "Time to check in." The uniforms rose, and Ethan ran, sprinting through the endless hallway, gasping. He finally spotted a staircase. He bolted up the steps, but something felt wrong. No matter how far he climbed, he never reached another floor. Stopping, he looked over the railing, his stomach twisting. The lobby was below him, unchanged, as if he had never moved. Then he heard footsteps. Someone was coming down the stairs. A figure approached from above. The same build, same clothes, same face. His own. It grinned and said, "Going somewhere?" Ethan stumbled back, shaking his head. This couldn't be real. The other Ethan stepped closer, grinning wider. "You belong here," it whispered. Ethan bolted, sprinting back down the stairs, but no matter how fast he moved, his double was faster. The walls pulsed, the stairs folding into themselves as the hotel swallowed him whole. Then a door appeared on the landing below. Room 306. No time to think, he lunged for it, yanking it open, and was met with darkness. Cold hands gripped his shoulders and yanked him inside, slamming the door shut behind him. He found himself somewhere new, somewhere worse, the air smelling of rot in a decayed room with thick dust. It wasn't room 306. It was older, a forgotten place, and he saw a bed covered in moldy sheets. Trembling, he pulled back the covers to reveal a corpse, him, rotten and decayed, wearing the same clothes he had on now. His body had always been here. Behind him, the door creaked open, and the guests entered, smiling, waiting. The whispers engulfed him, rendering him immobile as the guests stepped closer, their hollow eyes locked on him. His reflection in the broken mirror smiled, saying, "It's time, Ethan." The walls groaned. The ceiling warped. The hotel was alive, wanting him to stay as the guests reached for him. He had to choose, run or accept the truth. Glancing at his corpse, he finally understood. He'd been here before, He'd never left. Taking a deep breath, he slowly closed his eyes. And the whispers stopped, while the guests faded, the hotel letting him go. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was outside, standing on an empty road where the hotel had vanished, leaving only an empty lot. Checking his phone, it read 3:06 a.m. Shaking, he pulled up his hotel booking app, only to find the Penrose Hotel no longer existed. Had it all been a dream? A hallucination? A gust of wind blew past, and the whispering was gone, relief flooding him as he turned to leave, until his phone vibrated with a new notification. Your stay at the Penrose Hotel has been extended. Ethan's blood ran cold as the hotel was gone, yet somehow it still had him. Forever. Ethan's fingers trembled as he stared at his phone, reading the chilling notification, your stay at the Penrose Hotel has been extended. Incredibly apprehensive, he tapped the notification and the hotel's booking page loaded, revealing no cancellation option, no phone number, just a single line that read, "Check out. Never." "No," he whispered in disbelief, feeling a cold dread settle in his stomach. Despite his better judgment, his hands moved on their own, scrolling through the glitchy screen. Then a new message appeared, taunting him. "Would you like to return?" Two options stared back at him, glaringly clear. Yes and yes, while a desperate voice in his mind screamed, "No, no." The moment he attempted to exit the app, his phone screen flickered and the reflection in the glass changed to reveal his own face, older and hollow with dark circles under his eyes, bringing an unsettling sense of vulnerability. Then, a whisper from behind him pierced the air, chilling him to the bone. "You forgot something, Ethan." He turned quickly, heart racing, only to find the hotel was back, standing exactly where it had always been, waiting. Panic surged through him and he ran. His legs burned, his lungs screamed in defiance, but no matter how far he went, the road stretched endlessly behind him, the hotel never fading from view. Then, his phone buzzed again, the sound grating against his frayed nerves, and he tried to ignore it. But something compelled him to look. "Your room is ready," it read, and he felt his vision blur, the world tilting, the road beneath his feet twisting and distorting. Suddenly, as if yanked by an unseen force, he found himself standing in the lobby of the Penrose Hotel once more. The receptionist greeted him with a disturbing smile, and the guests turned to face him, their hollow eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger. The bell chimed mockingly as if announcing his fate. "Welcome back, Mr. Carter," the receptionist said, and Ethan's heart sank as he noticed the guest book was open, a pen floating in the air and hovering over the blank page. In looping ink it wrote, "Ethan Carter, checked in forever." The doors slammed shut behind him, sealing his fate, and in that moment Ethan knew. The hotel had won. He was never leaving. Ethan's breathing came in jagged gasps as panic enveloped him. He turned desperately, searching for an escape, but it was clear the Penrose Hotel had sealed itself shut, trapping him within its oppressive walls. The guests, their smiles grotesque and insatiable, stepped closer, as if drawn by an unseen force. The receptionist, with an unsettling calmness, gestured toward the elevator. "Your room is waiting." "No." "I'm not staying," he shook his head, the words rushing out in a breathless plea, but his body betrayed him. His feet moved on their own accord, carrying him toward the elevator. The doors slid open, revealing an ominous interior that seemed to pulse in time with his heart. The panel illuminated with one solitary button, 306. Before he could react, the doors snapped shut behind him, trapping him within as the elevator lurched downward, deeper than the hotel should logically allow. A whisper curled through the air, chilling him to the bone. "You never left Ethan." The doors slid open with an eerie grace, revealing his room, waiting silently, as if time had paused within its confines. Inside, he was confronted by a horrifying sight. A man sat on the bed, his own face aged and hollow, a mirror reflecting the embodiment of despair. The older Ethan lifted his gaze and whispered, "It's your turn now," each word heavy with inevitability. Staggering back in disbelief, Ethan gasped, "No, this isn't real." The older version of himself smiled sadly, the haunting echo of profound understanding in his eyes. "That's what I said." The very room twisted around him. The walls seemed to breathe, shadows stretching and contorting as if alive. In that moment of clarity, Ethan grasped the hotel's dark secret. The place didn't merely take people, it replaced them, assimilating one guest at a time into its relentless cycle. The older Ethan stood, reaching out with a hand that radiated resignation. "You don't fight it, you just take your place." Horror surged within him as he heard the guests gathering outside the door, their anticipation palpable. The door creaked ominously as he turned away, desperate to run, but it was too late. The mirror mounted on the wall showed the undeniable truth. His reflection was gone. It dawned on him with crushing despair. He was already part of the hotel, forever entwined in its fabric. The walls closed in around him. The whispers grew louder, echoing his fate, devouring him whole in the dark. And somewhere outside, invisible to the world, the Penrose Hotel vanished once again, biding its time, waiting patiently for its next guest. Forever.